Support for this podcast is provided by SHL. From talent acquisition to talent management, SHL Solutions provide your organisation with the power and scale to build your business with the skilled, motivated and energised workforce you need. SHL takes the guesswork out of growing a talented team by helping you match the right people to the right moments with simplicity and speed. They equip recruiters and leaders with people insights at an organisation, team and individual level, accelerating growth, decision-making, talent mobility and inspiring an inclusive culture. To build a future where businesses thrive because their people thrive, visit shl.com to learn more.
There's been more of scientific discovery, more of technical advancement and material progress in your lifetime and mine than in all the ages of history.
Hi there, this is Matt Alder. Welcome to episode 507 of the Recruiting Future podcast. We live in rapidly changing times, and it's increasingly difficult for employers to anticipate how the roles in their businesses will develop. An ageing workforce is a further complicating factor. The growing consensus is that a skills-based approach to early careers recruiting could give employers the flexibility they need to plan for the uncertain future. But how does skills-based hiring work in early careers? And how should employers develop their strategies in this area? My guest this week is Matt Kirk, Solution Owner, Talent Acquisition at SHL. Matt has a big focus on early careers and has some incredibly valuable insights to share based on SHL's pioneering work on skills, competencies, and behaviours. Hi, Matt, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Matt. Great to be here.
An absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Please, could you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
I can. So my name is Matt Kirk. I head up a number of solutions here at SHL, in particular for today's topic, early careers, which in my world is apprentices, interns and graduates. I've been in the assessment industry for around 20 years, more years than I care to remember. And in that time, I've worked at a number of different providers. I rejoined SHL in August of 2021 to head up some of the TA solutions.
Fantastic stuff. And just tell us a little bit more about SHL and what they do now.
Of course. SHL are the world leaders in people science. We assess between 40 and 45 million people each year. We have over 10,000 clients all around the world. And we collect billions of data points every year on candidates and employees. We span the talent acquisition and talent management markets. And ultimately, our vision is to bring the power of objectivity to every people decision.
Great stuff. So that kind of makes you the perfect person to answer this first question, which is, from your perspective, what's the current state of the global graduate recruitment market?
Yeah, I probably sum this up quite well in one word. Not a great answer, but we can expand on it. In flux, I think, is the perfect description for not just the graduate market, but also the recruitment market in general. The precedence of change is unrivaled. And I think that's been brought on by a number of familiar foes, the pandemic, the current economic situation that we have, and the change we're seeing in the workplace, and particularly around roles, what people need to do within those roles. All of those have added to a whole host of uncertainty within the market. For grads in particular, we're seeing that there's more people graduating than ever. And some regions are increasing graduate recruitment, some regions are staying flat. So there's more graduates for the same, if not less, roles. So that's obviously having a knock-on effect in terms of hiring fresh grads. And also graduates now, I looked at some research recently that Civil did, and they were saying that more graduates than previous years now plan to go straight into the workplace. I think that's an interesting topic and something we can talk about. But I think that's down to the cost of living.
Yeah.
graduates are finishing university, often with lots of debt. They're worried about the cost of living, and previously, whereas they may have taken a year out or gone on to do a master's, I think more and more graduates now saying, do you know what, I need to get into the world of work. I need to start earning money. The final point for me was I think organisations see graduates as the answer to the ageing workforce. The number of people that will be leaving the world of work, taking with them their experience and their knowledge, is higher than ever. Roles are changing, but more importantly, organisations don't know what the future of those roles will be, and they see graduates as well-rounded individuals who potentially can plug those gaps.
A lot of the conversations that I've had about graduate recruitment, college recruitment in the last year or so focus a lot on skills and skills-based hiring. In fact, a lot of the conversations I've had about any kind of recruitment focus on skills and skills-based hiring. I think it's probably important to really clarify what is meant by that. So can you explain what skills-based hiring means in this context? And I suppose particularly the differences between skills, behaviours and competencies.
Of course, it's a hot topic. I have the fortunate pleasure of speaking to many, many clients around the world who partner with us for their talent acquisition needs. And skills is a constant that we hear in every conversation. For the listeners, and to set the tone for my answer, I think it's important to note, from an SHL point of view, we measure two types of skills. We measure hard skills, which are coding, typing, things that kind of physical people can do. And then the second version is the softer skills. And that's where we're seeing kind of huge interest and uptake in the market around skills-based hiring. So just wanted to kind of clarify the different types before I got to this point. So behaviours. In SHL's world, these are observable actions at work. So things that you can see people doing on a day-to-day basis. So think about things like encourages other people to express their views or consults widely before determining actions. They're the kind of things that we can see on a day-to-day basis in individuals. Now, they are good. The challenge with using those for recruitment is there are hundreds, if not thousands of them. So how do you identify the key ones that are important for roles? It's a difficult thing to do. What we then have next is soft skills. And that is really made up of several behaviours. So if we think about the examples I gave around expressing views and around asking for other people's perspectives, that would roll up into a skill like consulting others. Now, the good thing about skills is it takes hundreds and hundreds of behaviours and it narrows those down into, in SHL's world, 96 skills that are relevant for all roles within the organisations. So what we now have is a much more manageable number that organisations can help to use for recruitment and development. And what it does is it gives us a basis, a foundation, a single talent language that everybody can be assessed about. And then finally, if you took a range of skills and you combine them, typically that's where you get to the competency level. Historically, organisations have recruited at the competency level, and I don't think that competencies will go anywhere over the near future or even the long distance future. I think the reason we're seeing such an uprising of interest around skills is because of the uncertainty of what roles will look like. Competencies are much more defined. If you have a role and it's been the same for a number of years, reliably you can say, okay, I'm happy to look at a competency level because I know it's consistent. What we're seeing now is organisations have no idea is probably strong, but organisations are struggling to predict their talent needs over the next 2 years. So skills at the next level down below competencies gives us a broad enough view that we can not only look at whether somebody is right for the role that they're coming into the business to do, but then also as that role changes or as the organisation changes, does that person have the skills needed to be flexible enough to do something different within the organisation?
From what you've said there, then it kind of makes perfect sense that skills are what people are now looking for when it comes to hiring graduates. Is that why it's advantageous to do skills-based hiring for graduates?
Yeah, it's offering more flexibility, competencies, do. And look, to be very, very clear, organizations will still recruit against competencies. That makes sense. So, and organizations will say, okay, I also want to look at skills, or maybe a combination of the two. And that is why I think there's additional value for organizations to be had. And to give you an example here, SHL's talent framework is called the Universal Competency Framework. Now, that measures 20 competencies and it measures 96 skills, and that is made up of hundreds and hundreds of behaviors. So if we take that example, obviously in a recruitment context, in any context, to be honest, we are not going to provide an individual or an organization with 96 scores against skills for each of those. It's unmanageable, it's confusing, it's unnecessary. But what we can do by collecting more data is we can do a number of things. So SHL has identified 11 skills based on research that are predictors of success across all graduate roles. So at a recruitment stage, getting insight into those 11 skills is critical because you know that it's a research model around predicting success. But what we've done by measuring the 96 is in the back end, we have scores on the remaining 85 skills, so that when you onboard people, when you develop people, when you want to create a talent marketplace, you have a whole host of data on those individuals that you can repurpose and look at different points in time throughout the employee life cycle to look at career paths, to look at people who maybe have the right skills to go and do a slightly different role, or to be part of a team. So skills, for me, that the big benefit that organizations will get from skills is that flexibility of being able to capture more data and then use it at different points throughout that life cycle.
Is there a variation with graduate recruitment? Is there a variation between different countries and different industries?
Absolutely. So SHL has recently conducted 2 studies around graduates. The context for this is we have our graduate JFA, which is the 11 skills that I mentioned earlier on in the conversation. And we have looked at 20,000 responses from candidates all around the world and looked at how they've scored against those skills, looked at what are the top 3 skills and what are the top the 3 skills that are likely to be areas for development. And it's brought up a number of things that I think people will find interesting. And for those listeners, there are 2 studies. There's lots of the more data in this. I mean, obviously we're gonna fly through this at the moment. But if you go to shl.com, click on the graduate page, you'll be able to download the white papers there. And also we've got some upcoming webinars on this subject, so you can register for those as well. So looking at regions firstly, so we've looked at the global profile. So what are the top 3 and what are the top 3 strengths and top 3 areas for development? And actually in strengths in particular, we see a lot of consistency across different regions around the world. So takes responsibility, coping with setbacks and criticism, and adapts to change are consistent across all of the regions bar one, which I'll come on to. That in itself is very, very interesting. If you looked in the media over the last couple of years, I've seen the unfortunate term snowflake flashed around when talking about graduates. But actually what the objective data is telling us is actually adapting to change and coping with setbacks are real strengths for this cohort. So again, for those who are worried about bringing graduates into the business thinking they might not be resilient, actually our data says opposite. The one difference we see is around Africa, and we see there adapts to change isn't one of the strengths there, but it's replaced with works to high quality standards. So very, very consistent, very little difference. We do start to see a bit more of difference in the areas for development. So again, global profile looks at, analyzes information, strives to achieve, and uses time efficiently. So they're the 3 globally that we see when we look at all 20,000 plus sets of candidate completions. they're the ones that are most commonly seen as weaknesses. We see differences in Africa, Americas, Europe, and Oceania around the areas for development. But again, reasonably minor. It's fairly consistent. And without going into all of the details, I say people can kind of download the white papers and have a look for themselves. But it's interesting, and it starts to become more interesting when we think about, okay, well, what does this mean? What are the implications for hiring graduates in these different regions? If you're looking for adapting to change, for example, in Africa, and it's not a strength, what does that mean for your applicant pool? How could you measure that as part of the recruitment process? We've then taken it a step further and said, okay, well, the regions is really interesting. I wonder how that differs by industry. So we've taken the same set of 20,000 completions. We've looked at 9 industries within that data, and we've identified the areas for strength and areas for development. And we see the same pattern again, really. Areas of strength, very consistent across all of the industries, and with a few minor differences. One would be consulting. We have adapts to change, falls out and works to high quality standards, takes its place. And then we start to see some more differences around areas for development, particularly around automotive, consulting, government and public sector. Interestingly enough, government and public sector, one of the areas for development which is unique, which we didn't find in any of the other industries, was generating new ideas.
Going back to earlier in the conversation when we were talking, you mentioned the cost of living crisis and how that was affecting when new graduates choose to enter the workforce. Broadening that out slightly, what does work-life balance mean to the young people who are entering the workforce right now?
It's in their top 5 of wants from employers. So having a work-life balance, and the research you talked about there, in terms of, if we think back to that, when grads now coming into the workplace, due to what I believe would be partly related, if not fully related, to the cost of living, I think this is the same view, but based on the output of the pandemic. Candidates or graduates had a strange, unique time during that period where they faced challenges none of the generations before them have had in the same way. And the work-life balance has become more and more important. And I think that's true broadly, not just for graduates. I think people are now saying, okay, it's important to me. It's not just about 70-hour weeks, me working myself and having no life outside that. I want that balance. And organisations who don't provide that balance are likely to struggle to attract but also retain the talented people within their organisation.
That makes perfect sense. And I suppose pulling the skills-based hiring and the work-life balance and people's expectations of the workforce in 2023, how can employers offer an appropriate candidate experience to this sort of cohort of people when they're recruiting them?
It's probably my favourite subject. I think there's a number of things that organisations can do to help engage talent. And the first thing I would start with is communication. If you look at things like Wikijobs, Glassdoor, those types of websites, you'll see often that communication is one of the things that candidates complain the most about, whether it's I didn't hear back, or I didn't know what was happening, or I don't know what the next stage in the process is. And I think with technology, that's quite an easy thing to fix. We've done we conducted towards probably the end of 2022, we did a candidate feedback survey, and we asked a whole range of questions. One of the things was, what's the most important thing for you as part of the recruitment process? And one of the answers was, I want to understand what's happening. I want to understand what the process is. I want to understand why, for example, I'm being asked to do an assessment. And I want to understand what's then done with that assessment output. So how do you make decisions based on it? So I think communication for me, letting people know what you're doing, why you're doing it. I also think making it a two-way process will increase candidate engagement tenfold. So whatever the outcome, whether a candidate is successful or not in getting the role, everybody should benefit from the process. Some of the ways that candidates could benefit, they're getting insights potentially into the organisation and the role itself. So they're learning about whether that's the right organisation for them. I think also offering, when assessments are used, development advice and strength-based feedback is a must. So again, one of the survey results are the vast majority of candidates who took the survey said they were very happy to do assessments. And actually, in fact, they felt like it gave them the opportunity to demonstrate their skills in a fairer way, but they wanted to get something out of it. And that, again, with technology, is reasonably easy to do. So here at SHL, we offer personalised video feedback for all candidates. So everybody who completes, whether you're successful or not, they will get a video addressing them and their strengths so that they get something out of the process. And the last thing I would say is just make it engaging. Talk to them show them a video of last year's graduate talking about their experience. I think there's often a case for a lot of organisations where it's very corporate. And actually for this generation, that may not always be the best approach. So think about your audience, make it engaging, make it a two-way process, and just be open with the communication.
And as a final question, and really sort of picking up on your comments about technology there, what does the future of graduate recruitment look like? And, how's technology likely to change things further in the future?
Yeah, I think the reality is we're at the start of the new norm now. And the new norm is probably constant change. With everything that's going on in the world, the reality is we're probably in this situation for the next 2 to 3 years, I would say, at least. And actually, technology will drive the innovations in that time. So SHL have launched SHL Labs, which we have committed $30 million over the next 3 years to innovation in this space. And they're looking at things like how AI can be incorporated into it, assessment experiences, a whole host of kind of things in that space. What we then get is now things like ChatGPT. What does that mean for the future of graduate hiring? How do we make sure that it's being used in the right way? So I think technology ultimately is going to drive forward the innovations in the assessment market. And that will be, certainly be a very interesting space to be in. Data has become the number one thing we get asked for organisations now, clients that we partner with, that we didn't get asked for anywhere near as much is give us as much data as we can about these people so that we can use it in different ways. They can get the best out of it from a candidate or an employee point of view, and organisations can make the right people decisions based off it.
And lastly, you mentioned the website there where people could look at the research. Remind us of that website, and where else can people find out more about the insights that SHL has around graduate recruitment?
Yeah, so at shl.com, there is a solutions tab on the website. If you click on that, pick graduate, you will see the white papers on there. Follow us on LinkedIn as well. We publish an awful lot of research. To say we are getting billions of data points across 45 million candidates every year. We're using that research to help predict future trends as well as identify trends within the data itself. So follow us on LinkedIn, visit the website regularly. We're constantly updating it. There's always some new research that people can digest.
Matt, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thanks, Matt.
My thanks to Matt. You can subscribe to this podcast in Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or via your podcasting app of choice. Please also follow the show on Instagram. You can find us by searching for Recruiting Future. You can search all the past episodes at recruitingfuture.com. On that site, you can also subscribe to our monthly newsletter, Recruiting Future Feast, and get the inside track about everything that's coming up on the show. Thanks very much for listening. I'll be back next time, and I hope you'll join me.
This is my show.